Welcome to the Find My Catalyst podcast. We all have problems we're looking to solve, and we know that there are solutions out there, but we struggle with this. How do we find that solution? Where does the nudge come from to help us take the next step, start solving tough problems? This podcast is designed to help you find your catalyst, take that next step. I'm Mike Simmons. I'm the founder of Catalyst Sale. My catalyst today is Mary Grothe. She is the CEO of House of Revenue, a fractional CRO, 3 times founder, host of the Destination Remarkable podcast, and a friend. This episode is brought to you by the Catalyst Sale Game Plan. It's our approach to goal setting and execution. If you head to catalystsale.com/game, you can find more information there. Let's get to the conversation with Mary. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Mary, we started having enough fun early on before we turned the microphone on that we just had to turn the microphone on, or we were going to just keep talking and nobody was going to hear the discussion. How are you doing?
Okay, we got to be honest with each other. I have a very high ponytail today. So typically when you see that, it's usually coupled with a pretty sassy attitude. This is also podcast number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for me for the day. So I'm so ready to bring it, and I hope the audience is ready.
That is awesome. I had no idea that was a ponytail. I just see, but my hair just kind of looks like this when I wake up in the morning. So I see as you turn, then we've got it. So we are ready to bring it. So you've just done 3. This is podcast number 3 today.
5.
5, excuse me. So when you say bring it, what do you mean by bring it?
I've had 4 rehearsals. This is the main event.
That is awesome. You are prepped and ready to go.
Yes.
So let's stay fired up. What's firing you up these days?
Oh my gosh. So much. I think I've had the hardest year of my life. And I think a lot of people have had a hard year. It's been interesting from the CEO level to meet with other CEOs and founders and just hear what they've had to navigate this year, just with the market and inflation and their clients, their business, their team and employee demands and profits being pinched and everything with the war. And there's just a lot going on. We've got midterms coming up and it's a lot and it's weighing on people. We have just so much happening with recovering from the pandemic. And then there's issues now in education and people who are parents. And there's so much fighting and so many arguments and so much adversity. It's been a hard year. People are tired. I'm glad to know I'm not alone. But really what's firing me up these days is knowing that it's in my power and my control to reshape what's going on in my life. And for that, I'm super grateful. I've actually spent the last couple of weeks, more so like the last couple of days, in some pretty deep reflection on what caused the trials this year. Like, what could I have done differently as an executive, as a wife, as a mom? And I just believe in having that fresh chance. So I get to unlock the next version of myself. I think it's going to be a great version of myself because I've grown a lot this year, but I can learn and grow. Like, I don't want to waste that. So what's firing me up right now is just realizing that I have another chance to get to the next version of me and my business and myself as a wife and a mom and as a friend. And so that's what's got me fired up today.
Where does that perspective come from to look at it and say, because this is a really healthy perspective to look at this and say, hey, this is a trial I'm going through this and I have control. And there are certain things that I have control of, and I can start to compartmentalize and put things in different places so they don't get distracted. But where does that perspective come from that you can look at this and say, hey, this is a trial I'm going to get through and I'm going to be better on the other side? Where's the perspective come from?
It comes from the pit of despair, which is the place that I've been sitting for the last couple of weeks. That dark, depressive place where I question everything about who I am and my life and the calling on my life and my purpose. And if I'm a good steward of what God has given me, if I'm hurting people or helping people, if, intentionally or unintentionally, in the pit of despair, I feel like we're all given the opportunity to choose. We could just choose to continue to stay there. And I know a lot of people choose to continue to stay there and continue to manifest more of what put them there. And I know that it takes a lot of strength and courage to get out of that pit. I have learned how to understand myself to the core, that when I start having those really depressive thoughts and I get really hard on myself and that negative self-talk, and I start personally attacking myself for bad decisions and you're really screwed up and you're a failure. And I've learned that when that starts happening, that's not me talking to myself. Like, that's the enemy. He found a way in and he's just like, woohoo, I got you. You're in the pit of despair. And I'm going to make you believe that you have no value and worth to your life and you're screwing everything up. And I was able to get out of that funk. Like I know when to ask for help, thankfully. And so I reached out, like I have a really great coach, and I reached out, I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm in the pit. Like I need help. And so he's actually helped me the last few days, just in reflection and understanding like what happened to get to this point and how can I learn from it? What does the next look like? And ultimately, I would say that I think I know how to do it because I've had the privilege of doing it a lot. I've had an extremely turbulent life. And so I've just had the privilege, I guess, of pulling myself up and getting back up.
Yeah. And you highlighted it earlier where you said you're not alone. I've dealt with the pit and have found that where I thought I was at the bottom, there's actually another level of bottom below that. And you look at it and say, okay, how do I stop? What do I do next? Where can I go? And I think one of the things that you highlighted here that's super important that I think a lot of people tend to miss on is asking for help. So where does that power come from? The power of asking for help?
Yeah. Well, my help comes from the Lord, but I know not everybody has the same view on that. And, but for me, I mean, that's where my help and my strength comes from. And I think it's in those moments of full surrender that I've also learned how to do is just to say like, I can't do this on my own anymore. And it's also as a CEO, like I've got a business, I've got employees, I've got clients, and got an office. I have responsibility. And a lot of my anxiety and fear comes from like, will we be okay? And that's one of the core triggers of anxiety is, am I enough? Will I be okay? And it's that fear of the unknown and the uncertainty of where things are headed and feeling out of control. Those are things that really send me down that spiral. But the beauty is with my belief system, being a woman of faith is just preached to me and it's in the written word that those don't have to be my battles. And I can lay those at his feet and he's going to help me. But I'm a very stubborn type A overachiever. So that's my biggest battle is flesh versus spirit. And I just try to sit in the driver's seat. And I've got this misinformed mind that what I have is because I did it or I created it. And it's terrible because it's the antithesis of faith is believing that I have to create good outcomes. And because it's then saying that I don't believe that God creates those good outcomes for me. But it's very interesting being a woman of faith in the marketplace, in a CEO role, in the revenue field, which is like before I was a Christian woman, I was a number one sales rep in major bro culture. And, let me tell you the things I'm not going to tell you, but I could tell you the things that I did that like I'm really not proud of in my 20s and just to try to fit in and to be like the guys and to be number one and make all that money and, do all the things. And so I just look at the place of it now and it's like, I know, like I've been trained to know. And God has been so faithful because I get in the pit and I know when to surrender and I know when to let it go. And every single time, like he has never failed me. But I have to come to him. Like I have to genuinely get to the end of myself and exhaust everything. And that's just my personality. It's how he made me. It's how he created me to have dependence on him. Like it's what I have to deal with in my life.
Thank you for sharing the story. This is powerful. And, for those who either don't have a similar faith or do have a similar faith, there's I would say know that you're not alone, whether you're not alone in your faith or you're not alone with your community around you. You're not alone if you choose not to be alone, if you choose to seek help, if you choose to ask for help, if you engage with others. And when you engage with others with intention, being intentional about application or practice of faith or intentional about the way that you interact with others, then you be shocked at what opens up and how blind spots start to disappear. So let's shift into, again, the excitement, because it's pretty powerful to be able to go through this and also have that confidence in that faith that things will work out, that this is part of the process. Let's talk about the instances. Well, let's talk about where the excitement is around what's next, because you're a high performing leader who has built and rebuilt organizations, both inside your own organization and inside other organizations. You're a leader of people. So let's talk about that leadership side of things. So what are you working on next as you continue to move down this leadership path?
I feel like I need to take my boots off and like pull my legs up into my seat and cozy up with a cup of coffee and have this conversation with you. This is amazing. And I'm so grateful that you have me on this podcast today. So what gets me excited about that leadership role? Like, I know I was created to sit in this seat because I could feel the fire inside of me. Like in the seasons in my life when I haven't been in this seat, I feel like I'm not living to that fullest potential and there's something left to give. So even though it's super hard, like I know I'm here by design and I'm so thankful for that. So as I look forward, I get to sit in two leadership seats and one feeds the other. So in this new season, I made some recent changes at House of Revenue, our company. And it was really hard over the last few months. I had to shift the model because the leading indicators actually earlier in the year were telling us a story. I didn't have the conversations I should have had. So unfortunately, I had a 3-month delay in being able to solve the problem, which just created, more stress trying to move through it in a shorter period of time. By the time, I was able to enact some of the changes, the lagging indicators showed up. So we had leading indicators in March. Hadn't really experienced too many of the lagging yet. And then the 3-month delay, I was just met with so much adversity right in the front. So we made some changes. We've shifted our model. We're meeting the demands of the market. We're meeting the demands of the type of CEO that we serve. And for people who don't know, we scale companies for a living. We are fractional CRO, CMO pairs, and we'll go on contract for a second stage company. So like they've already hit a few million, they're past startup, and then we scale them. So all things go to market, Brady marketing, sales, CS, RevOps. Well, it's really hard work. It's super complex. And I have loved being in the revenue community and in this category. It's so special to me. And I feel like I have a lot to contribute, but I'm one person. And one of the faults in how I had structured the company over the last couple of years was I was excited to build out a vision of a team member that involved getting away from really expensive talent, which is what we had in 2019 and 2020. And the theory was you could hire 2 junior people for the cost of one really expensive one, and then we can serve more clients. And I thought, okay, well, like in theory, the math works, but does this actually work? And he's such a great revenue leader, the guy who had this vision. I just love him to death. And I thought, you know what, let's just try it. Let's do it. Unfortunately, It didn't work out. So we had to undo it. So what we had to do was undo the client contracts, undo the team members who were here, and then go back out to market and recruit very expensive, very talented, mature revenue leaders for us to get the results that we know we can get with our clients. And it takes a lot of stress and pressure off of me because then they're actually like a lot better and smarter than I am and way more mature, which is such a blessing because then I don't have to be the most mature person in the room and I don't have to be the smartest person in the room and I don't have to rescue and solve every problem, there's so much joy in that. So as a leader, I'm really proud of what our team has been able to accomplish in the last few months because this transition's been less than perfect and it's been hard. So with that, in this new season as a CEO at House of Revenue, I'm now sitting in a seat where at first I was describing it, I'm like, man, I'm sitting with my peers. But now I see these people in action. I'm like, well, I have a lot to learn from these people. Like, I don't even know if we're peers. I think these people might be able to school me. But what I love about that is I get to then focus my time and attention in areas that are very fulfilling to me. One of those being, guess what? This is no surprise to you. Do you know what I love doing? I love being a CRO. I love being a CRO. So guess what? This just opened up. I now have a client.
What do you love about being a CRO?
Oh my gosh, everything. Okay. I'm a complex problem solver. And I love when I can see all the variables and pieces of parts of a working machine and engine and identify where they're not working well together or what pieces are missing that we need or the pieces that are there that we don't need. So really excitingly, I just got a client. It's actually an old client. We scaled them back in 2020. Their revenue leader left. And so there was a vacancy. And so they called us and they were like, hey, can you come back? But he didn't have anyone available to sit in the seat. Plus it's in my old industry. And this is our old client and I freaking love them. And I'm selfish. So I was like, I'm going to sit in this seat. And so I took it on and they're like, I think we have a sales problem. Like, we really just need you to get in with the sales team. It's really a sales problem. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
Sales problem. So I bit, I'm like, I'll play. So I do my discovery meetings and then I go in for a 1.5-day on-site meeting. I really love these people. They are so special to me. And yeah, it is not a sales problem, just so we're clear. But like a non-CRO would not be able to diagnose that. A VP of sales, which VPs of sales are amazing. Like I used to be, a head of sales and like those people are amazing and they can do excellent work inside of their department. But a CRO can see it holistically. So when I came in, because I have spent the last 3 years in really perfecting my work and experience and knowledge in branding and marketing, and customer success and revenue operations and go-to-market strategy, all the things that are part of revenue. I can go in and I was able to, within just a week, say it's not just sales. The sales component is maybe 10% and it's also reactive. It's happening because all of these other things are out of whack. So things since, that changed since we'd worked with them. So one, we're starting with their go-to-market. Their go-to-market has not been refreshed. So they're using an old playbook, the playbook that we had in place a couple of years ago when we scaled them. And go-to-market should be refreshed about every year, if not sooner, when you have big market shifts and changes. So then the next thing is the brand. The brand is not competitive with some of the newer companies in the space or some of the larger companies in the space that have done huge refreshes, like a lot of the national providers. And so that is causing them to be a little bit outdated. So then the marketing engine's outdated. Like we even looked on the back end SEO screen on the back end, and they're only ranking for branded keywords. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not even ranking for any non-branded keyword. Like, unless they know the name of your company, that's what a branded keyword is for anyone who doesn't know. Unless you literally go on Google and search the name of the company, they do not show on Google for anything. I'm like, well, this is a huge miss because people, your qualified buyer right there in your backyard is searching for your services and you don't exist. This is a huge miss. So we have to fix that. Then there was this huge backlog of sales collateral that hasn't been refreshed since COVID. And so it had some stuff about like the pandemic on it. And the sales team's like, well, what, you want me to put that in front of anyone? Or I don't think so. So then we go into the whole process for implementation. And we had originally built their engine on HubSpot, and the sales leader who left, he was so tremendous. Like he was just so good in HubSpot, but the engine was left to just to sit there. So we have workflows that are outdated. We brought in a new head of implementation, who's changing processes, but the engine didn't change alongside of that. So we have like a new vision, but then the actual construct of the engine isn't set up to meet that. So we have all of this friction to even get a deal sold with a pricing calculator that's not working, to get it through implementation, to get it onboarded. Then we have utter confusion between upselling and account management and outside salespeople, lack of visibility between the two key divisions in there. And then we have nothing for affiliate programs, partner referrals, and advocacy. And the level of lead source of partner referrals and client referrals dropped by over 50% in the last 2 years. So it's no longer a top performing lead source and we're not doing anything about it. So like we have a sales problem, like you have a CRO problem, you have an entire revenue problem. So what do I love about being a CRO? I'm new to being a CRO. I was a VP of sales when I first started this company. That's what we were, fractional VPs of sales 5 years ago. I learned marketing 3 years ago. So what do I love about being a CRO is that I am such a greater asset for these companies because I can solve the revenue problem holistically. And the value that is brought forth, like this is going to change people's lives. It's going to change their career. It's going to change the trajectory of this company. They actually deliver unbelievable product and service. And so now people will benefit from that. So like the snowball effect by being a phenomenal revenue leader, like who wouldn't want that job?
It's absolutely awesome. And there are going to be some people who are like, wow, how did Mary go into this level of detail relative to what came up as a sales problem? And think about any time that you've had a problem with yourself. Let's say you've got a backache. Your backache might just be you tweaked your back, but it could actually be that you had twisted your ankle. It made you put attention to start to lean on the other side of your leg. And I'm not a physical therapist, so I'm more of a revenue person too. But I'm trying to do the physical therapy side of things where you start to say, you know what? There's actually more to this than what meets the eye. We've got to do some root cause analysis. We've got to go a bit deeper and then start to see where the friction points exist inside the organization and where some of these things are disconnected, where we think we're talking about the same thing because we all have the same domain address in our email, but we're actually referring to an apple as a manzana and they look the same and they sound the same in different places depending on where you're from, but we're using two different words. So these disconnects happen inside organizations. And once it happens, the wedge can get broader and deeper and further apart. And if someone comes in and says, well, you got a sales problem. Well, heck, I do sales training. Sign me up. I'll go ahead and I'll train people. Yeah. What are you really doing there? You're addressing a perception around a symptom that's not the reality of what's actually happening inside the business. And this is where I think a lot of fractional revenue leaders do their clients a disservice because their expertise might be in sales and now they're playing in customer success or marketing or RevOps or wherever. And I'm not a marketing person. That's my biggest gap. So I tend to lean on other people to do that. This is a challenge that we've run into inside the marketplace. And this is why you've got to work with why your organization benefits from working with someone like Mary who can help actually diagnose this thing rather than just throw a pill at something to try to fix it.
I love being that sales trainer. I was that sales trainer for years.
Yeah.
And I still am a sales trainer. In fact, I literally have an email in my inbox right now that I have not yet responded to that came through yesterday to our info@ email looking for a sales trainer. They came across our site. They're like, we're hoping you can do some inside sales training. And I can't wait to respond to that email. Bad shame on me. I have an inbound lead that I haven't responded to. And I apologize to that person, like sales 101, but I've been very busy. On that note, the fact of the matter is, I can't wait to have that conversation. Heck yes, I can train your salespeople, but I'm only going to do it if it's going to move the needle, because I refuse to take your money if by training them and then putting them back into the poor ecosystem that they're a part of isn't going to get a different result. Then that's a waste. I would rather you not spend the wrong $50,000. I'd rather you spend the right $500,000 to solve the problem, because here's the way the math is going to work. If I come in and I do a, multi-month training experiment, we'll call it, with the people, and we're going to charge 50 grand for that, you've now wasted 3 to 6 months and $50,000 if the root problem wasn't in the sales team. So we can spend that money and we can spend 6 months, but depending on the size of the company, what is the missed market opportunity worth to you in your pipeline, and the missed conversions or the missed, whatever it is, because of the rest of the revenue ecosystem is broken. So we can spend that money. But then the other thing that's going to happen is, let's say then, okay, we spent this 50 grand, we spent 3 to 6 months, but then we didn't really see a return. So maybe it was the sales trainer. Let's go ahead and find a different one, and let's bring in a different sales methodology. So we're going to bring in another sales trainer. We're going to spend another 50 grand, and then it's going to take another 3 to 6 months. So now we've spent a year, we've spent a hard cost of 100,000, plus we add the cost of all the missed market opportunities that we have on top of that. Why would you not have just spent the right $500,000 the first time and actually solve the problem? And I think it's because that's a scary number to spend. But if you're able to get an actual written up diagnosis that says, from top to bottom, soup to nuts, this is your entire revenue engine. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. Here's your current state, your desired future state, the gap in between, and exactly how you're going to get there. And then here's how much it's going to cost to grow and the expected rate of return. Like, if you had this presented to you and you were asked to spend $500,000, would you? That's our hypothesis. That's what we bring to the table. But I started this company, the first couple of years was as a sales trainer. We're fractional VPs of sales, but it was the data in the feedback loop after the first 45 companies that we served that so clearly indicated that the companies who had a great brand and marketing engine 100% of the time outperformed those who didn't. And that was the realization for me, because I grew up as a sales unicorn. Like, I was a number one rep. I didn't have marketing or inside sales, or, people sending me appointments. Like, I did it all. And that's what people did in the early 2000s when you're selling, because marketing was like direct mail back then or something. I don't know what marketing was. I mean, you barely had a website. So here we are, that marketing has evolved so greatly, and it has helped the buyer, because the buyer wants to be educated. The buyer wants to be attracted to your brand. And like, if you're not investing on those things and doing them right, then you maybe don't have enough lead flow for sales, or you don't have enough brand awareness, or you have lead flow, but it's not qualified because you don't understand who your ideal client is and how to talk to them, or it's like how to be competitive in conquest campaigns and like fight for the traffic and get it into your funnel. Or, it's like, oh my gosh, revenue is the whole world. It is not any longer just like, let's train salespeople.
And it's cool to see this evolution that's happening. It's this combination of both technology and perspective, and I think a blending of functional roles inside organizations. Like, you start to get into product's impact on this, and how can we integrate product into these discussions? How can we not talk about the sales and marketing divide, but pull these things together? What happens from a sales, marketing, and success perspective, where people are looking at things like customer success and saying this is a new thing out there? Back in the day, we did care about our customers being successful when it came to implementing software inside their organization. Yeah, we've got a new name associated with it because some vendors, technology partners, were able to brand around that name, but it doesn't mean that this role has just popped up out of nowhere. So what can we learn from this history? What can we learn from how each of these things integrate with each other? I think what I hear is Mary talks about it both from a passion perspective and just a general experience perspective. Is she knows the questions to ask, the places to look, and the ways to organize things so that we can get to solutions and not just check a box where you put it on a line item and said, well, we're taking care of it because we've invested in it. It's kind of like me investing in the exercise bike that's over here to the right hand side of me. I've got that investment in there. I bought the thing. It's up to me to use it.
I know.
So
it looks so pretty over there, though.
Well, what's awesome is it's great when you want to hang a shirt on it or
very good for that.
Hang something else on it. So let's talk about what's next. Like, where's the evolution? Where are we going with all of this? Because we're seeing a deeper level of integration inside organizations, ideally the ones that are high performing, and they understand that they need to operate with some systems and design thinking. What's next? Where do you see this evolution of organizations going?
Collaboration is on the rise, and we have to remove these walls and barriers and the ego and the bias. And it can be accomplished in a lot of different ways. But here's what is present for me when you ask that question. Remember when we sold like 15 years ago, we usually had a single buyer. Like, some in mid-market sales, you had other influencers and whatnot. But really, like, you'd have a single buyer, like one person owned the project. They were given the task. They had a certain authority of what they could spend budget wise. Like, they maybe had to drop the 3 proposals on the CEO's desk, but they came back and like, that was my career. Early on, I sold to one person. It wasn't a team decision. Like, the one person just flipping owned it and they made the decision. What has happened over the last like 15 years? Everything feels like a team decision now. Like, we have so much collaboration happening inside of teams. And I actually think it's beautiful because now, as I've seen with teams who buy things, there is so much conversation, evaluation, and people going through the process to cross the T's, dot the I's, ask the questions, step in for each other where someone maybe didn't think about a certain thing. And now teams and companies are feeling better about the investments that they're making because more people were involved in the process. So I've actually noticed there's been quite a change in how people buy. It used to be that single decision maker. Now we're seeing it be a team decision in a lot of circumstances. Okay. So how is that then going to translate into the future of how revenue organizations are operating? I think that people, especially because we were all told to stay home and shut down and not talk to each other, now that in-person events are back, now that people are going back to the office, even if it's only 1 or 2 days a week, or the teams get together monthly or quarterly, the craving of being together and talking to each other and collaborating is at an all-time high. And I think because we were starved of it, we realized the value of it. I have seen collaboration at a level that I've never seen it before in my company, and seeing people rely on each other and ask questions. And it's beautiful. I've seen here inside of our company, the CRO CMO pairing be one of the strongest pairings, when historically that may have been more of a competitive and confusing relationship, like who owns what and who's responsible for what, and your MQLs are terrible and your team doesn't close and whatever. So I'm starting to, like, my prediction is that is people, you and I and other revenue leaders have been saying for the last 5 years, sales and marketing alignment, break down the walls and barriers between sales and marketing. So like everybody's been saying it. And usually it takes that amount of time to when people start believing it, living it, adapting and building around that. And I think that we're really starting to see this wave of people willing to collaborate and work at that level. Here's where I know, like, revenue leaders like you, me, and the people that we're all both friends with, is we're singing this and I mean, just singing it, preaching it, and shouting it, that a CRO is a holistic revenue leader. They are not a glorified sales leader. They own all of revenue. And they have to be able to see the entire customer lifecycle from ultra top of funnel brand awareness into the marketing funnel, into the sales funnel, into the purchase point, through implementation, adoption, retention, expansion, and advocacy. Like, a great CRO owns this and understands it. So if we can get that person, the real CRO, not the glorified sales leader, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just call them a VP of sales or call them a chief sales officer. Please stop calling them a chief revenue officer. It is not what they are. So there's a lot of people like you and me that are very vocal about this. We've got a great community. If we can champion around a real CRO role, what happens is then the vision is casted and there's no choice, but because there's no separation. Like, in an organization that a holistic CRO runs, where does marketing stop and end?
It shouldn't stop and end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, where
does the tech stack stop and end?
It shouldn't stop and end.
Exactly.
There are certain jobs to be done, right? So let's make sure those things are doing the right job in the right place. One of the things that drives me nuts is this whole idea, as somebody posted it the other day, God, who posted it, about ownership of messaging between sales and marketing.
Ooh, I don't know. I didn't see it. What'd they say?
It was just a poll. It was basically a poll, like who owns it. It was one of those things where, hey, it's a LinkedIn post. And actually, as I think about who posted it, she's doing some really interesting things in the market related to this whole RevOps ecosystem. So she's doing some really good things. She posted a poll. Poll's going to go out there for a week. It'll be interesting to see where things come out. My response was marketing owns the communication piece in the way that the poll was organized, because that's their area of expertise. Now, sales and marketing should collaborate on how that evolves, because the feedback loops that we get from our customers, the prospects, people who we don't want to be customers from a success perspective because they churn high, all of these things need to come together so that someone who actually has an expertise in this specific area of communicating with words to people when we're not in the room can leverage that power. I can do that when I'm in the room with someone because I can see the nonverbal and I can iterate on those things, but I stumble on words that go out to one to many. So it's great to see the conversations. To Mary's point, we are in the early days of seeing this continue to come together. And we've come so far in the last couple of years, but we're still in the early days.
Marketing is the correct answer.
Marketing is the correct answer. Thank you.
My right hand, my CMO, Sabrina, I can send her anything. And it's like decent. It's my thoughts. It's decent. It probably has typos, but I mean, it's like decent. I understand marketing and I understand how to write in a compelling manner. But as I'm sure you've noticed today, I can't say anything in less than 5,000 words and it's always full of typos. So when we're collaborating, like you said, on some form of messaging, it's website copy, it's a social media post, it's a newsletter, it's going out into an email campaign, whatever it is, I will be the brains behind the sales component because I'm the one who gets to have conversations with the CEOs all the time. So I'm very present in it. And then guess what I do? I dump my thoughts in it. And then I also send her copies of recordings from the field and she transcribes the actual CEO's words out of their mouths from that, couples that with what I put forth. And as an unbelievable marketer, guess what she does? She turns it into the best messaging because that's a superpower of hers. That is not mine. And guess what happens? So like in the last month, we've had a few CEOs come through our inbound funnel and they open up the conversation with, I read every word on your website and you were talking directly to me. I'm like, no kidding. And then I always have to ping Sabrina. Hey, Sabrina, guess what? We got another one. Like, it's so awesome to see what happens when you actually have the collaboration, but let the person who has the superpower in messaging actually own the messaging. I'm sorry, the salespeople do not write very good emails. I've seen them, I've written them, and they probably take the salesperson like way too long. And is that even efficient? And I'm sorry, they're not that good. I've written them. They're not that good. And I'm probably like one of the better ones. But allow your marketers to partner with you. This is where collaboration is at its finest. And a chief revenue officer should be able to cast a vision of the strategic initiative. Like if you're launching a new ICP and a buyer, we did this primary market research, we did some secret shopping. This is what the competitors are doing. This is how we're morphing. These are the attraction methods. This is where we're going to be testing it. This is where we've already tested it and we've seen some results. And here's what's coming to you. Here's what I'm expecting out of marketing and sales. And this is the project. This is the creative brief. This is my expectation. This is the timeline. Get it done. And here are the metrics by which I'm going to hold you accountable. Like that's a CRO. And then guess what? Sales and marketing go do their thing and you have amazing results because the vision came from one. But if marketing has the vision and then they go try to pitch this on sales and then there's this weird relationship between the two. And then it's like, yeah, well, the last time you made something for me, your leads were so bad and they didn't convert. And then marketing's like, well, the last time we spent all this time and energy making this, you guys didn't convert anything off of there. And I, whatever. It's like, oh, right.
Why do we struggle with empire building inside organizations and building and creating these silos?
Because we as human beings, we have a need to be loved. And many of us in a revenue field, like we're very passionate and we're very smart and we are type A and we're stubborn and it's meaningful, especially this younger generation. Like we are searching for purpose. There's actually a new diagnosed form of anxiety, which is centered around the lack of purpose or not an inability to find your purpose. Like it's actual like purpose-driven anxiety. And it's in the younger generation, so millennial and below. And what's happening is that so many influencers have gone out on all platforms, professional and lifestyle influencers, and they have set the bar so high for what it's supposed to be in life. And we've set the bar so high. And some people have manipulated the media to make it look and tell the story of perfection and brilliance. So now we have a younger generation, millennial and below, like aspiring for that. And if they fall short of that, it's as if they've missed their purpose in life and they're feeling defeated and hurt. And I'm one of them, and I've experienced it too. And if you're going to be somebody, especially on LinkedIn, you need to be, one of these gurus by age 28 because you did a thing one time and now you're an expert. But the way that you can manipulate, like what's that book about PR? Like I'm lying, trust me, or trust me, I'm lying, or whatever it's called. Right, yeah. So it's like you can be whoever you want to be to anyone. You can lie about your life and make it look anything. So the problem is as a society, somewhere along the way, somebody started making this North Star, and now people are striving for it. So if I'm a revenue leader, LinkedIn is toxic because I am being influenced by all these people who have quote unquote made it. And if I'm going to quote unquote make it, but it's not even just in revenue leaders, it's in startup founders. Like if you're not posting about your latest raise, like you don't even exist, and that's just not the truth. And so then you have inside of a company, and people typically in revenue, especially on the sales side, we're usually competitive, we're super passionate, we're smart people, and like we're type A and we're stubborn and high urgency. And like, okay, all of that is like a really bad recipe. So we have ego and we want to win. And sometimes, depending too on the way that we were raised and like where our moral compass is, we actually might strive to win, even if not everyone wins with us. Like we can win at someone else's loss. And I think that there's this, like, as human beings, like we are created in this way. We're all very imperfect and we have a need to be loved, a need to be recognized, a need to have that purpose. And so I feel like if it's allowed to be that way inside of a company, there's going to be bias and extreme ownership and entitlement, which is also potentially a form of like protection for their teams. And that is, if you have that, how in the world are you supposed to collaborate? Like I recorded on one of the 4 podcasts earlier today that we have spoken about, was talking
the rehearsals.
About the rehearsals. We talked about the word challenge.
Okay.
And I was telling a story. I'm like, Sabrina, my CMO, like she challenges me. And I realized when I said it, the way that it was received, he had a very different understanding of what I said. I just used the word challenged. Do you know that there's a way to challenge somebody in a calm, loving, data-informed way where they're not triggered and they don't feel like there's a threat or they did anything wrong? Like Sabrina is brilliant, right? She knows how to research and find the data, and she knows how to work with me. And she goes and she finds all this information. She comes to me and she'll challenge my way of thinking. She'll challenge our model. She'll challenge the website. She'll challenge something that we're doing with the client. She'll challenge, but it's so calm and professional and loving and data informed and well researched. So it's never a trigger. It's always like, oh man, I thank you. Thank you. You're exactly right. Like we need to pivot right away. Or I appreciate this, but I have some information too. Let's look through it because it seems a little inconsistent. But the guy that I was interviewing with was like, oh, there's this whole book on like challenge culture and challenging people. And I'm like thinking of the Challenger sale and all this stuff. And I think of like challenge in some ways. And then he was getting down the line of, competition and like all this stuff and ego. And it's like, there's a way to challenge in a conversation that's actually extremely beneficial to the other party, but there's a way to do it. So anywho, I digress. When we were talking about collaboration, like you have to foster a culture for collaboration. And unfortunately, in today's society, as leaders, we have to navigate through a lot in order to create that culture and to where it's like loved and embraced and encouraged and fun. And people want to continuously do it. Like we're up against a lot right now.
But Mary, I've got to get this number done and I've got to make it so that I get for the next round. And I've got to I've got customers who are looking for this product and I've got, this all sounds good. How do I actually do it? How do I stop? How do I pause and take a breath and do some of the things so challenge isn't perceived as I'm going to challenge you and create conflict. It's more of actually I want to challenge thinking and broaden opportunity and create an opportunity for growth. But like how do I've got all these things that I need to do. How do I slow down and do what you just said? Yeah.
I know you have a number to hit and that number is super important. Here's my concern and why we may need to look at this through a different lens. In the past, I've been feeling a lot of pressure. My back's against the wall. I have a number to hit. And where I wish I could have a do-over is in that moment, I let the stress and the pressure and the fear of not succeeding drive reactive and quick decision making that when I look back was actually very selfish. And it was really based out of fear because I couldn't stomach slowing down at the risk of not getting a good outcome. I also felt a little bit embarrassed that I even needed to ask the question or even admit that maybe I didn't have all the answers. I also knew that a lot was riding on hitting that number. And if I let somebody in, what if they took the credit for it? And what if it didn't help me advance or I wasn't seen in the right light? And so I've been in a similar spot. And I'm not saying you're experiencing those things. I'm just sharing with you that I have learned that when I feel under pressure, usually that pressure creates anxiety in sometimes mild forms, but it can be rooted in fear. And what happens is when we make decisions from that place, they're reactive and they may not be serving for everyone around me. So my recommendation is if you can find it any way to even pause for a couple of hours or a day and take a step away from it, invite others in and simply just ask for their observations, ask for some initial feedback and what they're feeling or seeing or what comes to mind when they first look at this and review it. And I would say there's a good chance that you might actually walk away with an idea or a thought that you didn't have that could be the missing and key element to get the result that I know you're able to achieve, but you might be able to get there with a lot less stress. And this could really help improve your quality of life. And I think the greater team would actually feel pretty awesome that you decided to include them on this.
This is why I would work for a leader like Mary.
I wish it was that good every time I try to have that conversation.
And think about it. And it's that good because you've had that conversation before. It's that good because you've screwed up that conversation before. It's that good. It's that good because people have had that conversation with you before. It's that good because people have screwed up that conversation with you. Like we're all learning as we go through. So let's give each other a bit of grace as we go through the process. Mary, this has been an awesome conversation. We've talked a lot about where we make mistakes, where we have opportunities to learn and different ways to get better at this. What about the dark side of things? What about are there some things that we haven't touched on yet that people tend to hide or tend to stay away from?
We talked a lot about ego and fear and anxiety and trying to impress and entitlement and, things that are just so toxic and hard, but they're part of human nature. And in my 20s, I had an unbelievable sales career. A number one rep, made, several $100,000 per year. I was pretty much buying my friends every trip, every round at the bar, like everything. My 2 houses, my 2 cars, my cool BMW Z4 Roadster, like 2-seater convertible. And, I just, to the outside world, I had everything. And I really enjoyed showing it all off because ultimately I was just broken on the inside and I had a super traumatic childhood and found a way to find healing through success. And then it became the addictive drug because it's only short term. It doesn't heal forever. So as soon as the high wears off, like I had to go get more. And so my 20s were actually super difficult. And a lot of the things we talked about today, with just the anxiety and the fear and the stress and like the imposter syndrome and not wanting to be found out and entitlement and claiming and finding purpose and all of those things. Well, I would say that the success for me, whereas it gave me comfort and it gave me an identity and it made me feel worthy, it was only short term. So God has different plans. And at the end of my 20s, even though I tried, I left my sales career, I started my first company at age 28 and it was work hard, play hard. And then I felt even better with my new ego about being a CEO at age 28. And, there's nothing I can't do, but God has different plans. And when I was 29, I actually went out for a night of drinking, which was not atypical. I did that a lot. And I ended up driving home and I drove my car into my neighbor's front porch. And that landed me an opportunity to think about my actions in a very cold and hard jail cell. And everything in my life turned upside down at that point. And it was so confusing for me because I grew up in a very broken home and broken childhood. And I thought I found my way in life. I did everything the world told me I was supposed to do. I chased the titles. I chased the success. I chased the money. I chased the recognition. I did all the things. I literally did all the things. And I had so many people proud of me, patting me on the back. They were jealous of me. And boy, did that feel so good. I felt that I needed to feel it because I still at that point didn't even believe it myself. So I had it all together on the outside. On the inside, I had nothing. God has a great way of getting my attention because I'm extra stubborn. So it was a really pivotal point in my life. And I became a Christian 6 months after that happened, maybe 7 months, actually 7 months to the day after that happened, I became a Christian and came to the Lord. And I realized there's a different way of living. And I've had such a unique opportunity. In fact, I went back to the same company in the same role for 3 more years after I closed down my first business. But this time as a completely different person, a person coming from a place of love and mercy and grace and empathy and kindness. And I got a do-over. I got to do the job again, but without steamrolling and being so highly competitive and running over people and also just sitting there. I used to sit there and refresh the rankings, talk about being a narcissist because I was number 1. And I would just watch and make sure and look at the deficit of the gap between the next person. That's not good. So we're clear, that is not healthy. But that's what was making me feel like I deserved another day on this planet. And so the second time around, I got a do-over and I'm so grateful. So interestingly, there is so much more to this story. And earlier this year, Forbes Books reached out to me and they said, hey, we've seen your stuff, your podcast, your blogs and whatnot. We think there's a story here. I'm like, yeah. Haha, what? And I went through this screening process and did a pitch and I went to this panel and 4 out of 4 unanimous were like, we have to publish this story. And I said, well, please know that I'm a woman of faith. I do not hide my Christianity. And you can only publish me if you understand that I will not have your editors carving this stuff out. Because I went to publish a book in 2020 and the editors carved it out. And so I did not publish. So I got full approval. So I've been in the writing process. I have a ghostwriter and he's amazing and we're besties. And I just record my story and he types it and it's brilliant. So Forbes is publishing this book called Destination Remarkable, Surviving the Dark Side of Success. And it's going to publish in September of 2023. So if that isn't cool enough that somebody thought my trials and tribulations and the roller coaster of a life I had, was worthy of being published in a book, they want to publish a second book. And they're actually going to publish the other side of my life, the revenue side. They're publishing the Revenue Scaling Playbook, and that is going to be published in April of 2024. Title may change, but it's going to be something around that. We haven't started on it yet, but I'm beyond elated. So if anybody wants to learn more, go to marygrothe.com and you can put your name or email address in there. And then once I accumulate a list, I'll have a whole program for pre-sales, book launch stuff, if anyone finds that to be intriguing. But yeah, thanks for letting me share a little bit more on that story.
Well, I can't wait to have you. If we don't have you on again between now and then, I can't wait to have you on right about the time of the book launch so we can talk about that part of the process and get that out in front of folks. Mary, this has been absolutely awesome. Where would you like to, and I know you gave the URL, where would you like to send folks? Where can people connect with you directly if they'd like to engage with you, if they'd like to learn more about House of Revenue? Where would you like to send folks?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, Mary Grothe, Grothe. And you can email me info@houseofrevenue.com. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, go to marygrothe.com, type my name into Google and see what happens. There's a famous person. She passed away. She was like a racer, like a motorcycle racer named Mary Grothe. And so I thought that was so cool. I'm like, if you Google me, it's me or it's her. And I'm like, if I've got to share this space, she seems kind of like a badass. So I'm going to share it with the deceased Mary Grothe, former motorcycle racer. She's pretty cool.
That is a very cool person to be sharing this space with. If you know of anybody who would enjoy this conversation, and I know you do, if you know of anybody who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. Tag Mary and I on either LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, wherever you're going to communicate socially about this, and let us know that you've shared it and why you shared it. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?